Hello and good afternoon, all. So it's been quite a tiring day and quite a learning day since morning. Actually, we had some great, interesting panel discussions, fireside chats, exclusive presentations, inaugural sessions. So it was a day of learning for everyone who was present for this conclave. So after this, we come to our panel discussion, which is on state e-governance mission team accelerating digital transformation. And I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Sumit Patni, who is the Associate Director, PwC. Welcome, Sumit.
Thanks, Fahim.
Then I would like to invite our speaker, Mr. Prasun Srivastava. He is the Senior Solution Architect, India and SAARC region, Cloud Protection and Licensing, Thales. Welcome, Prasun. I would like to welcome Mr. Yashpal Soni. He is the Head SEMT, Department of Information Technology and Communication, Government of Rajasthan. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much.
After this, I would like to welcome Mr. Ranjan Kotnala, who is the Head SCMT, Department of Information Technology, Government of Uttarakhand. Welcome, Ranjan, sir.
Good afternoon. Good evening, rather.
I'd like to welcome Mr. Ganesh Jayaraman. He is the Head SCMT, Department of Information Technology, Government of Maharashtra. Welcome, Ganesh, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite Mr. Santosh Kumar Soman. He is the Senior Consultant, TMSPOC for Kerala SCMT and Technology, Head KFO and Government of Kerala. Welcome, Santosh, sir.
Good evening.
And last, I'd like to welcome Manjeet.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to all the esteemed panelists.
And I would not like to take much time of yours, so I'd hand over this panel to Sumit, who will moderate it, and I look forward to hearing everyone's view from a backstage. I'll take a backseat now. Over to you, Sumit.
Thank you, Fahim. Thank you. And a very good evening to all the esteemed panelists for this panel discussion on state e-governance mission teams accelerating digital transformation. Okay, so being an ex-SEMT myself, I can relate to the great work that the state e-mission teams have been doing for pushing the e-governance and the adoption of digital in their respective states. And over a few months, we have seen that COVID-19 crisis has really brought about years of change in the way companies, including the government, are working in doing business. And digital adoption has taken a quantum leap in both the organization as well as industry levels. So, my first question to the panel is uh, I want to hear your thoughts on the digital transformation that you feel has happened during the COVID era. So I will begin with Mr. Soni.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone. And my thoughts on this question is, let me give you a background why this is important and how the states, or rather the entire country, has contributed in the digital journey that has helped during the COVID times. As a country in India, if we see, we have grown from no phones to cell phones. When I say no phones to cell phones, that means remember the time when people used to have only the black color phone, and suddenly a lot of small handsets came in the hands of a common person, even to a cartwala who sells sabji in front of individual house. Now, this is nothing but a disruption. And as a country, we are very good in handling disruption, whether it is good or bad. But each state, as a country, we are very good in handling disruption. The same thing happened during the COVID time. We were not prepared, rather, none of us in India, rather, the entire world was prepared to handle this beast. As far as Rajasthan is concerned, yes, we had issues when it all started, and everybody was not very sure how to take forward the work, whether from home, because especially to the government departments, work from home was a new concept. They only heard this thing in the corporate environment. So the first thing was how to initiate things so that to set the ball rolling, and at the same time make sure that the important things, for example, direct benefit transfer to all the citizens or the residents within Rajasthan state, how this has to be ensured. So what we did was we created a centralized war room here in Rajasthan, and I myself was part of that war room. In that war room, we actually handled this problem in two ways. One way is to give a handshake support to the resident of Rajasthan who were either migrating from a different location to the hometown or from the hometown to their further hometown. So this was the first challenge, and we needed to get the entire data among ourselves and make sure that this data is actually being shared in the evening to the central team at Delhi, so that they can massage this data and take a judgment based on this data. So this is the one side of the story. This is how we handled. The other side of the story is we need to make sure that the apps, the applications which actually give handholding support to the end user support, we need to create them within hours, not even days were given to us. For example, if somebody is moving from state 1 to state B, from Rajasthan to Maharashtra, there were certain government restrictions that one need to have blah 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 type of documents, and he need to have a entry pass if somebody has to enter. If he's going by train, then a separate entry system is required. If he's going by flight, then a different entry system was actually required. So we created this application in the name of digital transformation, because again, digital is again a very confused word, because digital doesn't even mean, some people think that it's Excel, some people think it is a business transformation and the process transformation and the avatar that takes place after business transformation, that actually becomes a digitalization. So I'm not going into that topic in detail, because that I can speak at least for 4 or 5 hours on digitalization. So coming back to the point, so we created these applications and ensured that these applications are available on wide platforms. It was not only on a simple website. We made a apps for that, even a iOS app and a Android app. But making these apps was not the point of it. We need to advertise that so that this goes to the common man, and common man takes the advantage of this. So we advertised it on the various social media platforms, be it Facebook or YouTube or whatever the different channels of government of Rajasthan were. We advertised it very massively, and we gave a single point of contact, that is that our call center or the COVID war room number was given, so that all the complaints or the issues that are being faced by the common man all land up there. And we also ensured that the entire data that is being forecasted or being we ensured that this data was captured and ultimately it was sent to Delhi. So this was one part of the story. The second part of the story was, by using the digitization, we ensured that the food, the basic amenities which was not available to the common person, people were thirsty, people were not having food. So we created small war room centers even at the district level. And these districts levels, we ensured that it is manned by the proper police staff in addition to the IT people, so that they speak to the language of a common person. So in this process, we have covered the entire Rajasthan, all the districts of Rajasthan, and ensured that the help to the common man is to be extended in the shortest possible time. And we also ensured that we need to create a CSAT type of system, so that we actually knew that whether the service or the help that is being extended to the common person is actually going to the right person or not. If it was not going, then we need to create measures so that we optimize on the resources, because resource optimization was another concern. The second thing on the digitization part, what we did was we have a application on GIS based application. So what we did was we by using the central and state applications, we identified various areas wherever the COVID positive patients are there. By using GIS and certain GPS based applications, we earmarked that a Bhilwara model, you might have heard that it was very common. So we identified by usage of the digital technologies that these are the areas which can be forecasted as a containment zone, and we must ensure that it must not be spread out to the another district. And this application actually helped us, and it gave a 360-degree view, not only to the central location which is based in Jaipur, but yes, to the entire state. And by usage of this, we could be able to restrict the containment zones and ensured a detailed plan of action for that particular area by isolating that area within that. So these are the few examples which I think has been capitalized by the uses of the digital transformation that has been used specifically by government of Rajasthan. If you want me to highlight specifically on something, I am more than happy to share my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Soni. Indeed, a
Sumit,
lot of
sorry to disturb, Sumit. I would request everyone who, apart from the speakers who are trying to join from this link, to kindly join from the delegate registration links which we have shared. This link is specifically only for the speakers. Thank you, Sumit. You can take over.
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Soni. Indeed, a lot of work that has happened during the COVID area, and must appreciate the kind of initiatives that have been taken. I'd like to move on to Mr. Ganesh Jayaraman and hear his perspective on the transformation that has happened.
Yeah, thank you, Sumit. Actually, Mr. Soni had provided in a very detailed way as to what are the various activities that all of us had come across in the context of IT in various states. So actually, with regards to or in continuation to what Mr. Soni said, in Maharashtra, what had happened was the same challenges were faced, but the individual departments or the municipal corporations, they were equipped to most part in terms of handling those challenges, in terms of even setting up the war rooms and everything, most of those things. And they did need some help in the context of developing some applications or understanding what technology can be used in a particular situation. So there we had provided some input, but we had a different type of challenge. Again, I wouldn't say that the challenge that that Maharashtra faced is more evolved or less evolved, because these are, the states face at different stages. It's not like it has to be in a straight line. It can be in a cycle also, right? So the challenge that we faced was that we had to make sure that there is an interoperability of data. There is actually a standardization of data at each entity, at each department level, and then there is an interoperability of data between the various government entities. So that is where the IT related challenge that we faced, because there were some benefit schemes which were that were announced, which covered multiple departments. There were some benefit schemes that were going to be announced for which the concerned department needed more citizen data, so that they will be able to budget for those schemes in a better way. So then we realized that we don't have a standards or a golden record of the citizens. As a matter of fact, I know that Rajasthan had started this journey years back via the Bamasha, so due to which they might have everything ready. But here we had a different challenge, that we couldn't always depend only on Aadhaar or only on PDS data. So we had to make sure that we are having data collated from multiple departments in an inorganic way, and then that data is getting standardized, and then we are able to provide that data as a base. And on top of it, other concern is making sure that there is security, there is privacy of the citizen that is being taken into consideration. So some of that work in a war footing we did, but most of the work now we are trying to do it in a planned way, where we want to make sure that we are able to get from the birth of a citizen, study the education, and then the other social changes that happens to a citizen, then the assets that the citizen buys or sells, all the way to the citizens passing away. We want to make sure that all that data gets standardized. We are able to have a golden record. It's getting authenticated via Aadhaar, and we are, making sure that the privacy of the citizen is taken into consideration, especially in the context of the upcoming personal data protection law. So this is the type of digital transformation that Maharashtra has faced. And Maharashtra is currently, I wouldn't say that it is a journey or it is a challenge that has been completed. For what was required earlier in a war footing, we were able to provide it. But now we are planning to take it to the next level, where we want to make sure that we are better prepared if at all there is another crisis that comes in, and all of a sudden a department says that, okay, I want to give a particular benefit to this set of to this demography of citizens with this exclusion criteria. So now you tell me how many such citizens are there. If any department comes to us, we want to be in a position to immediately provide that metric, not the list of citizens, but the metric, because the list of citizens can be provided only after the citizens provide the consent. So this is a hot project that now we are taking up, so that we are able to institute such a citizen data hub, unified citizen data hub. So this is what I would like to say in the context of the pandemic plus the digital transformation that we are currently taking up.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh, for sharing this initiative of Maharashtra with all of us, because I think this is the need of the hour. And the golden record that you mentioned is something that will solve a lot of problems that we have today. Thank you so much. We'll move to Mr. Manjeet. So, your thoughts on digital transformation that has happened during COVID? So, you're on mute. You're not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and good to hear the thoughts from the respective gentlemen and the respective states. And I would like to congratulate each one of from the government officials. Actually, they've done a phenomenal job as far as the COVID, during the COVID, because we were not prepared, and all the governments have worked day in day out to ensure that we are coming out of this. So I personally like to congratulate everyone, those who are there in the pandemic. So from the digital transformation perspective, COVID has actually given us the experience and lessons of a lifetime. Besides the health and the economy, COVID brought the disruptive changes in the way we used the technology and the way the technology can be used. Firstly, during the pandemic, businesses were forced to work from home, work remotely. This has accelerated the adoption of the work from home, which has demanded deployment of the robust networking and the connectivity solutions at places, be it at the hotels, be it at home, or be it at the makeshift offices or wherever. So slowly the work from home transformed to the work from anywhere. Secondly, cloud adoption has also saw a massive surge during the COVID time in order to enable businesses to access their data and the business processes from anywhere. Hence, the cloud adoption, also saw a paradigm shift, what we have witnessed. Thirdly, which is the most important, all these solutions as well as the data which is being transmitted through these channels commanded a high level of a security, which is the expertise that we have. Then we saw a phenomenal and growth in the cyber security adoption across the different various industries. One more area that we saw a significant amount of digital transformation is the financial industry. The way people moved to the digital money and the digital banking, that was phenomenal. There are many other areas which we also saw the digital transformation because of the COVID. This is what we have witnessed.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. I think all of the points were very relevant in terms of the faster adoption of digital, the areas that got accelerated, including the financial inclusion that happened, or the digital money that got percolated to the deepest levels. Uh, uh, Agree with all of these points. I would like to move to Mr. Prasun Srivastava.
Thank you, Sumit, for the opportunity. I hope I am audible.
Yes,
Yes.
you are. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, from our organization's perspective, I think you can say coincidentally, we were kind of more or less by God's grace slowly getting prepared for this type of scenario. The reason being, we got a taste of something similar during the demonetization effort, where our organization was called upon to participate and contribute to establishing the UPI ecosystem and the DBT ecosystem within the country. And also, as you probably know, we played also a critical role in setting up the security infrastructure around our national ID system, Aadhaar. So that being said, we were sort of engaged, but the kind of volume uptake we saw and the requirements for protecting and ensuring all this critical information around citizens and critical information around India is well protected and not vulnerable to nation state actors. That is something that we faced issues with during the COVID era. So we had to delve upon our engineering and R&D and threat intelligence that we acquire globally to ensure we build our solutions so that we can contribute and ensure smooth working of this. Cloud was another major, I would say a new thing for us because traditionally we have always thought of or delved into securing data on premise and all of that. But during the COVID era, a lot of new ecosystems that were building up. For example, the contract tracing apps and the data that is collected through them, the health apps that people were running. All this data, because it was such a disruptive time, and there was such a short time to get all this up and running. A lot of this, was built upon a cloud ecosystem. And we obviously had to dig deeper and figure out how to do that same adoption and build our solutions so that we can give the same level of protection and establish trust in cloud infrastructure rather than the traditional infrastructure. So those are some of the things that we faced.
Thank you, Mr. Prasun, for enlightening us about the work that Thales has been doing in protecting our data and the infrastructure that is being put into use for our critical projects. My next panelist that I want to hear from is Mr. Santosh Kumar Soman.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are.
Actually, digital transformation is happened in the country in many areas long back, which helped a lot to manage this pandemic situation. Whether it is education, governance, health, any area you take, we have initiated the transformation long back, which helped a lot the country to manage this pandemic situation. Kerala, we have implemented e-office long back, but it was not true paperless operation. People are using e-office, parallelly using paper also. Because during pandemic, there were no option. They were forced to work from home, and e-office effectively used, and it was become paperless. When it comes to the citizen, earlier before pandemic years, smartphones were like a luxury. To some extent, it's a luxury. But during pandemic, smartphone became a basic need of a citizen. The people started using smartphones effectively for getting any service, whether it is related to e-services or education or health or even e-commerce. All purpose people are effectively using smartphones and delivering services at doorsteps. That was one of the target of any state. how we can deliver the service at the doorstep of a citizen. That is happened during the pandemic. So I feel the digital transformation initiatives in the country helped a lot during this pandemic period to manage the life, to manage the situations, the COVID situations of the in the country. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your experience with us. We'd like to now move to Mr. Ranjan to hear your thoughts.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Sumit?
yes, sir. We
Oh,
can hear.
okay. So I'll limit myself to very live experiences that I had during the COVID time, and they are a bit interesting as well. So as my friend from Kerala, he said that e-office took off during that period, and it actually did. That's what we see, because when our director decided, and he said one fine day when somebody went with a physical file, he just threw him out, and he said, "I'm not touching any physical files." And within 1 or 2 days, the transformation into digitization of files was so drastic, and it was quite interesting. The only difficulty that I would point out during that is getting used to the system, because when there are maybe a large number of files attached into the system, so how do you locate the history? How do you refer to an older file or an older note? That may take time, a little bit training, but otherwise, because of COVID, I think use of e-office is enhanced by leaps and bounds. The second live example that I would like to say is I had a medical need, and I called the doctor and I said, "When can I come?" He said, "You don't have to come. I mean, this is a link or this is a phone number, and you just come online and I'll talk to you." Now, I do understand that the education and knowledge level of the people and the digital awareness counts in such facilities, in making such facilities better. But it was quite an interesting thing that my doctor could give me advice over the phone, and I knew what he was saying, and he knew what I was saying. I would therefore like to probably extend this facility into the excessive use of e-Sanjeevani, because in Uttarakhand, with the kind of terrain that we have, every now and then we see absolutely needy people, driving all the way to Dehradun, and half of them suffer consequences because of the distance. I wish that if e-Sanjeevani, which is the online doctor's appointment system, could be enhanced and pushed into the deeper mountains, and I have that plan of doing that at one of the places in near future. I did see a renewed interest in the pushing the broadband connectivity, the tower connectivity. We spoke to companies about giving them benefits of going to the remote areas in Uttarakhand and giving broadband and tower connectivity there. And companies were ready. So we did develop a policy of benefits to these companies. And that's going to increase the connectivity in remote areas. I did see a push to the Wi-Fi connectivity everywhere because of the need. And one very interesting and startling example that I would like to say is the pre-bid meetings were conducted online. So that was very interesting. None of the vendors had to come to the offices in Dehradun. And I was quite amazed myself when I saw my team conducting the pre-bid meetings online. And that was absolutely brilliant. As far as Uttarakhand goes, you recall that the Kumbh Mela happened during the time of COVID. And the pace at which the command control center was established in our office, from where everything was controlled, the crowd management was controlled from there. So that was one of the best uses of technology and digitization at that point of time. So these are some of the actual benefits that I see. and I noted on the ground as a citizen. My friend Manjeet did mention about digital money, and I was quite happy him pointing about that, because this is one of the push that SDG goals also have, in terms of control of health benefits, in terms of strengthening um, the women's sector and everybody else. So I think, yes, digital money adoption became very fast. I personally would say that I have not yet adopted it. I don't know why. I am from the old school, wherein it takes me some time to adopt the scanner and pay money through that. So I do go always log into my bank account and make payments, or I have cash in my bank. So I need to probably, as an IT personnel, grow into that area myself. But I see, when I see my domestic help and other people making payments through their smartphone, it's startling. It's startling, and that's the step towards empowerment at the grassroots level. So these are some of the very striking features that I saw during the COVID time in Uttarakhand.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjan, for your views. And I agree that all of us have been witness to these changes and the transformation that has happened either at individual level or at the organization level. And the true essence is, as you rightly said, whenever we see a person such as a vegetable vendor accepting payments through the digital mode, then we really feel that okay, now is when the digitization has happened or the digital transformation has started taking place. Though there's a long way to go still. But thank you, all of the panelists, for your views. And from this discussion, now it comes out that as digital happened, in the process, we created a lot of data. And now, with all of this data, we also get very, very prone to a lot of cyber attacks. So my next question is that how are we addressing the concerns of data protection for citizen, and how are we doing? How are we protecting from the ransomware attacks and the other threats that keep on emanating from all of this data getting created? So this is an open question. Anyone can take it up, please.
Let me attempt this. This is Yashpal.
Yes, Mr. Yashpal, please go ahead.
See, as far as data protection and cybersecurity, the sanctity of a individual's data is concerned, now this is a buzzword in everybody's mind today, because whatever we are seeing on the social media now and then, the talks of Facebook or maybe your account, ultimately we have a fear, or even a common person has a fear, that whether my data on the social media or whosoever is using my data is really safe or not. Coming to the government, what government can do? Yes, government has taken multiple steps at the central level. They in the form of making various policies, how we treat the data, the end user data, the customer data, the data within the organization, some confidential data, some general data, and then this data is also divided into multiple divisions. For example, how are you going to use the textual data which is there on the social media? How are you using the data which is there in the multiple databases, starting from Oracle of the Word to SQLs of the Word? So as far as my experience is concerned, what we have done is in Rajasthan we have the Tier 4 data center, which is probably the largest facility in India as far as Tier 4 data center is concerned. And we are controlling the entire security by using a in-house developed product called as single sign-on, and we call it as SSO. So you come within this data center on any application which is of your interest by using this single sign-on facility. The advantage of this is you are getting registered. What I mean by you are getting registered is whether you come by Gmail or your official mail or rajasthan.gov.in, ultimately whosoever is coming to access XYZ application is registered, first of all. Now, there are again definitely chances of being misused if you are sharing your username and password, or if you are accessing somebody else's email account, getting into the account. A lot of goof up can be there. So this is the first step that has been taken. In addition to that, we have created a SOC also, Security Operations Center. And this SOC has a very predefined role, which in turn gets connected with Cernin at the central level. So whatever the new incident that is being highlighted by Cernin, it is being taken care, and internal mail communication is being done, that these type of spams or spywares or ransomwares, they are being broadcasted by the hackers or ethical hackers. So you got to be careful when you are using your account. Third level, we have created a drive in which I think security is actually a journey. It is not a destination. We can't say that we buy a big tala from Aligarh, make a key of that, and then we see that we are secured. No. It is a mindset, it is a culture that needs to be evolved, needs to be developed, needs to be imbibed in the blood of the younger generation, as well as the senior leadership team who is directly or indirectly involved in the process. So to me, security is a journey, and in this journey process, definitely we have made policies, we have created processes for that, and how the normal resident is going to access, how the internal employee is going to access, what data is to be given access, what data not to be given access. So all those things are clearly defined. But having said that, we have to go a long way, because then in between you have a concept of cloud, hybrid cloud, private cloud, public cloud. A lot of things are coming, and it is the technology is changing drastically. So internally, what we have done is we have started a drive in which we keep giving trainings to the internal employees. The SOC is actually maintaining the entire data which has happened in last 1 week. It is being evaluated. We have also enabled the auditing services in addition to the SOC team, which is a third party, so that whatever is being forecasted by the security operations center team gets validated by the auditors team, whether we are on the right track or not. In spite of doing all these things, we are not sure whether the data of the individual person is 100% safe or not. But yes, it is a journey, and to me, I think we are very well aware, and consciously we are moving ahead in this journey. I hope I've answered your question, Sumit.
Sumit, I would also like to take this.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. And thank you. And I am actually 100% agree to what Mr. Yashpal has said. From the offerings that we have, which we offer to our customers and the partners, and I 100% agree that, cybersecurity is a journey, and one has to follow the journey. So from the offering perspective, Mr. Yashpal just talked about the various use cases where the security has to be there, and it has to be. It's just like a house, right? Earlier we used to have a one tala. What we mentioned, that there was a one lock, which was good enough. But as the time progresses, we have moved from one lock to the double lock, then the Godrej locks, the simple keys to the perforated keys, which cannot be copied. And then there was a need of a big tala. Then there was a need of a iron rod. And so there are various layers that, as the time progress, we are putting up a various layers to ensure that nobody is entering into house. The house is nothing but like what you mentioned about this SOC and the data center. If I were to compare the data center, because all the attacks where the various attacks which are happening, because the way the world is moving, the dark web, or the hackers are also getting more and more intelligent, and getting into the space of the attacks. So from the offering perspective, the story and the offering that we have, moment a user is entering into any of the data center, the first thing that he encounters is the multiple links to enter into that data. And from there, it is actually a journey, again, a journey where he has to bypass from links to the DDoS, then he has to bypass geofencing, he has to bypass the firewalls, he has to bypass the APTs, IPS, web application firewalls, data tokenization, key management, so and so forth, till the last mile where the laptops, you need to secure your email, you need to secure your endpoint, and finally, whatever data that you are generating, you need to store that data in a storage and then back it up in a place where, if there is any eventuality, you can retrieve that data to ensure that your businesses are not getting stopped. So yes, I agree that it's a journey, and we have also implemented this various solution at various customers' place, and further strengthen. And like I said, that from lock journey to the place where the different locks for the house, and obviously the various transformation is happening on the SOC, and wherever the SOCs now, we are talking of a next generation SOC. So this is nothing but a journey which is getting adopted, and we have helped a lot of customers to ensure that it is secured.
Can I say something,
Thank you.
Sumit?
Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. So I'll share a live experience for this, and I'll insist upon my stress on awareness and training, and not at the IT level, at the IT professionals level, like we all are. We're talking about the data of the citizen, and I think 80% of the citizen is unaware of many of these threats and the way they keep on jumping from websites and throwing away their data. Whether it'll be identity, it'll translate into identity theft in terms of hacking their bank accounts or whatever gradually, which used to happen in the developed world when I traveled there. Maybe I'll see those examples very soon here. But a live example, one of the important websites was hacked here. The reason identified was that it was made in some older version of WordPress. Now, that's where my question arrives every time. When I see the STQC certificate being asked for, somebody comes in with a injection and he just injects something and then he says it's good or bad. And it ends there. My question to the developers is, how much aware are you of the security aspects when you are coding the program? I have my doubts and I have my apprehensions that they are being educated on these. That's the biggest need, wherein we have to educate the programmers and other people and define the processes and define the checklists, and then run those. Number one. Number two, at some point of time, when your data center has to bypass the DDoS for some odd reason, and if it runs without the DDoS even for a single day, people don't understand what are we inviting on ourselves. And because we don't see those instances, that's okay. But it only requires a second of a default for some smart hack sitting somewhere else across the world. This level of realization and this level of awareness and knowledge, that needs to be done. You just can't be sitting and defining cybersecurity policies and CCMP plans and critical infrastructure plans. I mean, I'll share that I received the quote-unquote Nigerian email trying to, hack me and fool me into the phishing thing. And I called the cyber cell just to test their awareness. And I said, this is what I have received and how can you control this? Because I am aware of it, but if my mother, who doesn't know anything about it, or likewise somebody clicks on it, the person is gone. And the person asked me, so what do I do? So that's the cyber cell I'm calling, and the person is so unaware. Because you're not posting people who are armed with information and knowledge of the processes that they're supposed to.
I think Mr. Ranjan is experiencing some network issues, and we'll have him back soon. But in the meanwhile, I'd like to move to our panelists from the industry. So my question is specific to the gentleman from Thales. How can Thales help address the concerns around ransomware attacks to citizen data?
That's again, thanks Sumit for asking me that. I was itching to probably give my input here. So from our experience, what we see is that the first the first thing that gets put on a hanger whenever something like this happens is trust itself, trust in the digitization of data itself. So it causes hindrances in a lot of places. While today, ransomware attacks are not only activities of individual hackers and IT enthusiasts, or even white hat hackers. They are actually now regarded as threats to national infrastructure, which can be, which can be a malicious activity done by some foreign state. So it is quite serious, and it is considered seriously. If you would have read the news recently, you must have noticed that US had to pass a special law and make a special policy around how they protect their data. And it came straight from the top, from the president's office, regarding protection around ransomware and all of this. So because we are a global organization and we have myriad ways of acquiring threat intelligence. Our engineering and R&D competency centers based in India and globally, we had solutions. We had to develop more, make those solutions much more optimized so that they can protect the data, which is now grown considerably in volume, so that they don't cause a hindrance to active processes which are being run and active services which are being run. So what we do is we provide our solutions to protect this type of data at its core, at the last mile itself. So one is you build a wall using technologies which were explained earlier as plan A, and try to probably intelligently detect at the wall itself whether there is some spurious activity or identity theft or anything, or privileged escalation that happens. The other part is what happens when somebody's malicious software actually gets into the door and tries to encrypt your existing data, or obfuscate it and then hold you at ransom, or even delete it just to stop your services from working properly, which seems to be the latest latest trend. So what we do is we protect the data at its core by ensuring that we are able to whitelist exact and select application processes from accessing the data, so that there is no other application or no other process which or illegitimate user which can access the data at all. And the good thing that I guess we had to evolve also, because as rightly pointed out by Mr. Ranjan, that application developers cannot possibly cope up with numerous vulnerabilities within the frameworks, within the languages, within the browsers, etc., that they use. It is very tough to protect it at the application layer. So we had developed it at a very native layer over the operating system's kernel, so that we are able to give that sort of protection. Apart from that, we also have a threat intelligence gathering solution, basically, which allows, again, this is usually deployed at a national level. So it actually goes ahead and protects a country from any new or zero-day ransomwares or anything of the sort that might have been targeted towards that country's infrastructure. So that is something that Thales is capable of doing, and we have been executing them all across the globe.
Thank you, Mr. Prasun, for sharing your perspective and the kind of work you have been doing in terms of data protection. Now that we have heard the views from the industry, my next question is more to the governance team, which is here from the government sector. What value would you like to see in the partnerships with industry leaders from this space to jointly develop information and the data protection solutions which are best suited to a state's requirements? Can we go to Mr. Aman first if you want to come in? Anybody who would like to pick up this question? We only have a last 5 to 6 minutes left.
Can you repeat the question, please, Sumit?
My question is that what is the kind of value that you would like to see in partnerships with industry leaders from this space to jointly develop data protection solutions which are suited to a state government's requirements?
Okay, let me attempt this
Yes.
question. See, what is happening in the today's environment is when you say partner. Now, getting a partner is a very difficult in the industry now. Maybe because of multiple reasons. The sales numbers, because the sales guys, they live their entire life in numbers only. When they get up in the morning, some numbers are there, and in the evening when they are about to sleep, again some numbers are there. So if you really want my candid opinion on this, probably it is not by one state. I think if the companies need to partner, they need to bring the 360-degree picture in front of everybody. Because if let's say example of I should not name the product here on this public platform. Let's say X company comes to me and they say that they want to partner with me. But what is the guarantee that the X company has a 360-degree view on what the government of India is doing? Whether they are really participating or aware about the data protection policies, the cybersecurity policy, what the direction of government is there, or just they want to sell it. So yes, in the long term, cybersecurity and the security, you will definitely need a partner. Without partner, this cannot be eradicated, because sooner or later you will find lot many other new things which is going to come up, and it will be difficult for a individual department to handle all these things. But the companies or the vendors or the partners who are pitching the role of a security consultant or a security advisor, they need to probably think in terms of what value addition they really want to do, or they really want to sell the product only. That is the only contention I want to highlight over here.
Thank you, Mr. Soni. I think you have pointed out a very valid concern when it comes to the state government and how they want to look at partnerships and the kind of value that they derive from partnerships. Uh, so I think we are
Another,
nearing towards, yeah.
sorry, I mean, just one last bit.
Yes,
Another
please.
way to state the same thing that Mr. Soni said is that the partner should not be talking purely in the technology language. Okay, they need to have understanding of the e-governance and the pains or the needs. Okay, from a domain perspective rather than purely from a technology perspective. So when you look at it from the domain perspective, automatically the 360-degree view also will come, and you will also know as to what the central government is doing, or what the citizens are needing, the other state governments are doing, and of course definitely what the other enterprises are doing inside the state, the businesses are doing inside the state. So they need to bring in that mindset rather than just purely looking at anything as a technology solution.
You rightly said, Mr. Ganesh. I think the
Yeah.
technology partner has to get into the shoes of the government official and think from that perspective to really have the kind of value delivered that the government expects.
Right. I'd like to say something here. So that's
Yeah.
a very potent point. Actually, it's usually missed by most companies and organizations. So, from our perspective, we have been fortunate. In fact, Mr. Ashish Saraf, who is the country director of Thales India, very recently, in fact, 3 days back, declared that Thales would be doing $1.2 billion of investment in India to develop technologies. And again, this was done not on basis of just Make in India benefits. It is because even before Make in India, Thales was able to use our engineering talent here in India to develop products, source products and solutions. I'm saying not only saying services and software. We are talking about hardware also. So a lot of things were sourced and made in India through our partnerships with the Bell, Bharat Electronics Limited, Samtel, Reliance, and Larsen and Toubro. And we have till date exported somewhere around $500 million from India to the globe. So what we realized from an organization perspective is that exactly what everybody said here. If we are able to closely work with government organizations at a grassroots level and figure out what kind of solutions, etc., is, and of course, it is a partnership, both in terms of requirement mapping as well as development itself. In fact, most of our profitable products that we sell outside from India is jointly developed via our partnerships. So just to comment that that is a very relevant point, and luckily we have been fortunate enough not to miss out on it.
Thank you, Mr. Prasoon, for sharing your perspective. And I think we have come towards the end of this panel discussion. A lot of key takeaways. Thank you, all these speakers, for sharing your experience first on the transformation that all of you experience individually or at the organizational level. And it was really amazing to hear the kind of work that we have been seeing from the government side and from the industry that is coming, and a lot of perspectives here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining this panel discussion.
Thank you, Sumit. I'd like to thank each and every panelist who have joined for this panel discussion. It was really interesting understanding and knowing what exactly you're doing in your various in your states, and various great initiatives which you have taken. So with this, I would like to give a small token of appreciation, the e-certificates to all of you. So I'd like to start with Mr. Sumit Patni. Back in team, if you can just
Thank you so much, Fahim. It was a pleasure being a part of this panel discussion.
Next, I would like to if my backend team can put Mr. Yashpal Soni's certificate.
Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to present a small token of certificate to Mr. Ranjan Kotnala. Next to Mr. Ganesh Jayaraman.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next to Mr. Santosh Kumar Soman. Thank you, sir. Next to Mr. Manjeet Singh. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And to Prasoon Srivastava.
Thank you. This is really digitization in its truest form, even with
Thank
the
you,
background
everyone.
music file. Thank you.
Thank
care.
you. You all can leave. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.
ठीक है, जस्ट वेट, आई एम पुटिंग अप, यहीं पे कर रहा हूँ मैं, हाँ मैं यहीं पे कर रहा हूँ, जस्ट वेट। इधर पे करवा दे हैं? मेरा हो गया, साहब का लिख दिया मैंने।
Soft launch of he's done a wonderful job.
सबके
Guy
सामने।
is really smart.
Sir, topic, sir, we have covered almost all the topics, sir, in the whole day. A lot of officers from JNK, right, from Sarita Chauhan, madam, to even Athar from Srinagar Municipal Corporation. A lot of people have participated, sir. So people from all the states, even abroad also, sir. California also people got hooked up. So you can just have a glance, sir.
What is it about cyber security?
हाँ, अब सर इसी पे कर लेते हैं। कर लो सर। हाँ सर, इसी पे सर मैंने कर दिया।
Can we begin?
Yeah, full screen.
Can we begin? No.
Your audio is closed. Fine.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are ready.
Great to be with you all, and I think it's a privilege to be talking to all the people who are present at the moment. Just few things that would be of some interest to a lot of people. JNK Secretariat is today on e-office, and we are completely on e-mode. So we no longer use physical files. There would be very, very small number of physical files, and that too exceptionally rare. So that is one big change that has come about in JNK. And we are also moving on to all the head of the departments. So in this context, few things become very, very important, and I'm sure that the industry would know how to deal with that. One, of course, is the cyber security issue. And cyber security issue is not only vis-a-vis those who probably want to attack the site or steal data or things like that, but also in terms of ensuring that the data that we have is protected and is retrievable as and when you need it. So that is very, very important, because one of the challenges that will always remain with the IT framework is that are you as reliable as the physical files? There is absolutely no evidence to believe that it is not, but that question keeps coming, that is the IT system better or as comparable to the other system? We in JNK probably are a very good example of what the system can do. We used to carry files from Srinagar to Jammu and Jammu to Srinagar. Every 6 months we used to carry these files. We actually used to lose about 15 days every 6 months. So in a year, we would at least lose a month in terms of what we used to do. Now we can work from both the places with equal facility, and we can work from, even if we are in Delhi or we are anywhere in the country, we can work with this. It's such a wonderful system in comparison to the old system. So the kind of liberation it has done. The second point I would like to mention, that when we used to work with the physical files, in the evening after the day, we would carry 10 boxes of files to be disposed of till the morning. So that would be weighing around maybe, I don't know what, but certainly about 50, 60 kgs. Now you have just to carry a laptop, which is probably half a kg, which is a better bet than carrying all these boxes of files and then coming back with those files. So in that sense, it is great liberation. I don't think that anybody today would argue that how good is IT. It's good and it's getting better, but I think few things we need to ensure is that how user friendly we become. When we in JNK today are one of the best users of IT systems. Almost every facility is on the IT system. So whether it is getting an electricity connection or getting a building permission or mining permission, everything is moving on to online. But that challenge would remain, that once you move on to completely IT system, for example, if you look at food and civil supplies, 99% of our ration cards are Aadhaar seeded. The ratio of online transaction till few days back for the month was about 95%. So look at the penetration it does and ensures the quality of the service delivery. But at the same time, we need to ensure that these services are available 24/7 with least disruptions and are user friendly. User friendliness is what is going to take it forward. And I'm very happy to tell whoever is listening to this that today we are doing a extremely important thing. We are going to put all our revenue records in the online system so public can see it. Now, if you look at what has happened during the last 1 week, the CCTNS system has been made live in J&K, which is Crime and Criminal Tracking Network system has been brought online. It was pending for a number of years, but now we are online. The revenue records are getting online. All the financial transactions of J&K government 100% online. There is no other way. It has brought in immense transparency, but the challenge, as I would say, is just twofold. How do you ensure that it is user friendly? A, and B, how do we ensure that it's robust and more robust than the physical system? So thank you very much for giving a patient hearing. And I'm sure that this workshop would leave a set of recommendations. I'll just give another example to illustrate the point I'm making. We launched an initiative called Empowerment. Empowerment, if you type on the Google J&K Empowerment Finance, that's all you write, and then you will get to Empowerment. You click it, you will get all details of all the projects. The challenge there was that, and which we have to tackle, is that is not very user friendly. It's slow. So the initiative, despite its immense potential, probably needs to get a little more user friendly. So thank you very much, and I'm sure that this workshop will leave a set of recommendations, which our department will be extremely happy to carry out. Very few you would have imagined that online systems work in J&K. It does. I mean, very few of you would probably believe that post 2019, 5th August, all the banking transactions were online functioning. And during that period, GST, every system was online. The banking system was online. Today, all government transactions are online. And so typical image of J&K being back of the beyond, that's not correct. Today, we would be comparing with anyone amongst the best in the country, and at least among the most transparent systems anywhere today. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And it's like we are honored to have you at a platform. And basically today we had almost around 70 top bureaucrats, all the IS officers from across the country who had participated. And Amit sir and his team, and under your guidance and leadership, we have concluded this conclave today in a very high note with lots of learning. So we tried to create a knowledge exchange platform, and there are lots of knowledge which was shared from various states. There were lots of from across, if I say from across the country, people, the IS officers, the bureaucrats had joined, be it from north, south, east, west, and northeast. Also, we had people from Mizoram and Arunachal. They have also joined. And apart from that, we had some great, interesting talks in the morning also, where Amit sir talked about the kind of digitization processes doing under your leadership. We talked about e-office, and it's like tremendous. And so one of the speaker told that we would like to see in next one year that J&K be the torchbearer of digital transformation. That's what we are looking at. So with this, we would like to thank you, and I'd request my team, backend team, to just present a small certificate of token of appreciation to you, sir. My backend team, if you can. Thank you, sir. So this will be emailing it to you, sir. And
Thanks a lot.
it was really an honor and privilege to be for you to come here. And I'd like to, we are really grateful and thankful to you and your team, especially Mr. Amit sir, who has supported us, who has helped us in building such a huge conclave, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chana?
It was great. At least he joined, and we got an opportunity.